going to test this out for the first time. Thanks to everyone who hung out for Regina's tech troubleshooting on this. And we figured while we're at it, why don't I do, you can't hear me. Oh no. It says I'm not muted. Well, apparently we are doing more troubleshooting. You can hear me now? I would love if there was a way we can like crop and edit out the beginning. Anyway, hey everyone, it's Angela Rozmyn. I think all of you know me as the co-founder of Women's Personal Finance. Many of you probably know, but some of you don't, that I have not bought clothing for myself in almost 6 years now. My clothes buying ban officially started March 1st, 2017. But I didn't buy clothes like up to the end of February. It was more of a snap decision to get started. So I think the last piece of clothing I bought was somewhere mid-February of 2017. So when I first started, my goal really was that I had an overflowing closet, like a lot of us do. And I wanted to get rid of a lot of stuff and do more of a capsule wardrobe. I've been like reading and watching stuff like that, that other people had done online. And I was like, I'd love to do a capsule wardrobe, but I had so much clothing already that fit me and was in good shape. And it just didn't feel right to scrap my closet and start over. So initially I had started the clothes buying ban to wear through my clothing so that I could feel in good conscience, replacing and buying new stuff to have more of a capsule wardrobe. That was almost 6 years ago. So clearly things have changed a bit since then. And at this point, it's been, the environmental piece is really big. And so is the money piece. I've definitely saved a lot of money on clothes over the last 6 years. Those of you who are listening, if you want to drop any questions in the chat, I can kind of just talk through how my mindset has changed. And then I can also answer any specific questions that you have. So for starters, I think the big thing is that I do not buy clothing for myself. However, sometimes people think that means that I have absolutely no new clothing over the last 6 years. And that is not true. Some of it is new to me, and then I have occasionally gotten new gifts. So Regina, this past Christmas birthday, had sent me a package with 6 new pairs of Smartwool socks that she had found brand new at Goodwill 7 months previously and saved them for me for my Christmas birthday gift. And so I do have new Smartwool socks that are only like a month or so old, but they came from Goodwill and they were a present. So I do consider that an allowance within the clothes buying ban, as long as I am not doing the purchasing. But overwhelmingly, the clothes that I do wear are either ones I've had for 6 or more years, or they come as hand-me-downs, either from people I know or from Buy Nothing. This shirt I'm wearing, actually, I had bought from Costco probably 7, 8, 10 years ago. So this is actually not brand new, but the pants I am wearing were a hand-me-down from a friend who had known I was doing this clothes buying ban maybe 3 years ago now, 3 or 4. And instead of taking her clothes that she had gone through to Goodwill or to another thrift store, she took them to me first. And I went through them, kept what I liked, and then took care of the rest for her and took them to the thrift store. So that's where probably at this point, half of the stuff I wear is 6 or more years old to me. And then half of it is new to me through hand-me-downs and Buy Nothing. And then the occasional gift, like I said, the socks from Regina. My mom has bought me a 6-pack of underwear twice now over that 6-year period, but I actually do have new underwear this is a question that gets brought up a lot. So I figured I'd talk about it here because people say, how would I do socks and underwear and bras? Because those are like the things that people are always really concerned about. So with socks, I kind of covered it. Regina has sent me socks. My mother-in-law also bought me socks for Christmas. And Regina and I had actually talked about this around Christmas time, that in her head, that kind of seems like cheating because I know I'm going to possibly get these gifts for Christmas, but also it means that people that may not know what to get me or may get me something that I wouldn't love otherwise say, oh, I know that Angela would love socks for Christmas, and I really would. And so instead of getting some random gift that ends up sitting in my closet or sitting on a shelf, or I end up gifting to somebody else, I actually get a gift I like. So that has been a side benefit, I would say, of the clothes buying ban. And then bras, I have a lot of sports bras and actually old nursing bras that I still wear. They work fine. I hang dry them. I wash them gently. And then I have gotten quite a few of sports bras as hand-me-downs. And that didn't seem like a big deal. Actually, one of our WPF insiders had actually mailed me some sports bras from across the country more than a year ago now. Leah, yes, I have definitely become more intentional about clothing care. So underwear never goes in the dryer anymore. Never, ever, ever. I hang dry more stuff. I love hang drying in the summertime because we've got, big clotheslines out back and I can hang all our clothes on the deck. But with like the delicate stuff, I used to just toss it into the dryer, and now I make sure it is always hung to dry. Or if I'm doing some, heavier duty work, so if I'm cleaning the chicken coop or working in the garden or something like that, I've gotten better about taking off my work clothes and changing into like scrubby clothes. And so I would say also I wear a lot more like worn clothing for doing the hard stuff, whereas I used to just wear whatever I was wearing and then it would get kind of beat up. I've got pictures of me like gardening in like nice work dresses and stuff, and I just don't do that anymore because I want to keep them nice. Back to though the underwear, because that's the question that people always ask, and in theory I am going to write about my 5-year clothing plan for a blog post at some point, even though we're now at almost year 6. So for starters, I'm very gentle on my underwear. I hang dry them. I accept that they're not always going to be brand new. I have gotten gifts from my mom because she was very concerned about my underwear situation, which was fine, but it meant that it never became dire. And then about a year or so ago, somebody I knew in my community posted on Buy Nothing that she had a couple of pairs of underwear opened from the package. She had worn one and didn't like them, but there were a couple of more in the package that you don't really have a place to send open packages of underwear. So I was like, sure, why not? I will take them home and wash them and wear them. And it's funny because I cloth diapered my son, and we got used cloth diapers for him, and it's really not a big deal. It's like super normal, and babies poop in diapers, and we just know that we can wash them and get them clean, and it's fine to pass them on to another baby. For some reason, we've decided that it's weird to do that with adult underwear, even though they are way cleaner than baby diapers. Washing machines are great. Laundry detergent is great. It works really well. So for starters, I did accept an open pack of unused underwear. But then that same person knew I was doing this clothes buying ban, and she said, my daughter's getting rid of a whole bunch of clothes, and included in it were some very gently used underwear. At the very beginning of this clothes buying ban, like there is absolutely no way I would have taken somebody's lightly used underwear and worn them. But this many years in, my mindset around clothing and like what I am willing to receive from somebody else has changed pretty significantly. And our washing machine is great. I dry things on high afterward to kill anything that might possibly exist. And otherwise, I treat it like any other piece of clothing, and it's really not been a big deal. Like I said, the initial push of this was decluttering in a sustainable way. And part of that has expanded out to looking and reading more about fast fashion and the way the fashion industry in general makes clothes, and the amount of waste and the amount of energy and water and substandard labor that goes into most of our clothing. And so it's not just about the cost to me, but also it's realizing the like huge environmental and social cost that comes around the clothes that we wear. And so for me, this has been the like one thing that I've been very strict on. There are plenty of other things that environmentally, socially, like I do pretty well, but I am not anywhere near close to perfect. And I like that I have one thing that I can be stricter on. So for you, maybe, you know, I have friends that don't have vehicles, and that is their like big environmental and financial thing that saves them a ton of money and really lightens their impact on the earth. And, you know, they go all in on that. I still have a car. I do ride my e-bike around a bunch, but I still do have a car. I drove today. Some days it does seem to be unavoidable, but for me, clothing was something that I could be more intentional and more proactive about. So am I going to finish this clothes buying ban at some point? Maybe, probably. At year one, I would, or the first couple of months, I would have said absolutely there was no way I was going to do more than a year. At a year, I was like, well, maybe I can do 2. At 2, I was like, well, let's see. Maybe I can continue on a little bit longer. And by the time I hit year 4, year 5, it's really become just a part of my life at this point that I just don't need to buy clothing. There is so much clothing produced in this world. I guarantee you that there are people you know who are getting rid of stuff. And well, Goodwill is great. A lot of my son's clothes come from Goodwill at this point. Or from hand-me-downs in the neighborhood and beyond. But things that go to Goodwill are not necessarily, or your local thrift store or wherever, are not necessarily going to get used. When clothes go to a specific person first, and if that person is intentional about which pieces of clothing they pick, they're more likely to actually be worn. And so that's another thing, is that I have received a lot more clothing than I've actually kept. So again, part of this thing was that I didn't want to end up with like so much clothing that I already had. So even though I'm not buying clothes, I am probably more intentional about what clothing I accept to bring into my house than when I was buying stuff. When I was buying new things, it was like, well, I think I like it, I might wear it. And then, you know, 6 months later, you realize you've worn it once or not at all, and realize that maybe it should go, and maybe it sits in your closet for another 6 months before it actually leaves. But at this point, I am only accepting something that I know I'm going to wear. And I think that's just more about being intentional about clothing as well. And then another question that I hear a lot is, well, I would love to do that, but I have gained a bunch of weight, lost a bunch of weight, and I need to be able to buy new things for when I fluctuate. And thanks to the pandemic and getting on anxiety medication and dealing with plantar fasciitis, I am up 40 pounds from pre-pandemic, and a lot of my clothing doesn't still fit. Things like this shirt still do. But I would say that you can have a pretty significant fluctuation in weight as long as you're very open to receiving new things and wearing the things that still do fit. Of course, I am not a very tall person, so I am not in plus size clothing. And so I think I still have a lot more flexibility than some. But if you are wearing non-plus size clothing, or even like slightly in the plus sizes, I would say that even a weight fluctuation is not a reason why you couldn't do a clothes buying ban. Do I do any repair? I do very little. That's something that I would like to do more of. I've not been very good at it, but part of that too is that I have a grandmother and a mother-in-law that are very good at sewing and stuff like that. So they have been very gracious to help me on occasion, but in my someday list, I would love to do more of that as well. Like I've got some socks that I've kept to the side that have holes that need to be darned, and I just haven't done it yet. So maybe in this next year I can attempt to tackle that. But that would definitely even help further than that. I'm trying to think of any other really big ticket items. I'd say the biggest thing though is mindset. The first 3 to 6 months of the clothes buying ban was the most difficult. I'd say I was pretty typical about buying clothes. When my son was really young, I ended up at like Ross or Goodwill on a semi-regular basis before I would pick him up from childcare, just as my like downtime, alone time, just like browse TJ Maxx kind of thing, and end up with new clothing, even though I didn't really need it. So while I didn't do a ton of that, I did enough of it that I think I was pretty typical there. And I didn't think of it as part of my personality or a big thing, but it just became a habit. And so the first few months of saying I'm not going to do that anymore was difficult. And I pretty much couldn't go into those stores because there was just like a habit of you go in, you find something you like, good enough, and you buy it. Now I can walk past clothing at any store. I can acknowledge something looks real cute, but I don't feel that like tug to go see and bring it home with me. And I don't know, I would recommend it to pretty much anyone, I think. Maybe not 6 years, but I think pretty much anyone could do a year clothes buying ban unless you are really on a string budget or have a very intentional capsule wardrobe as well. But I'd say for most typical people, a year is totally doable. I do want to make just a quick note on the privilege piece of this. If you are really struggling paycheck to paycheck and do not have a lot of money, the idea of not buying clothes might sound like a good money saver, but you also have to have people in your network that you can receive hand-me-downs from. So that means like a robust buy nothing, friends who regularly have too many clothes and purge their closets, and that you have a staple of solid pieces of clothing in your wardrobe already. If you are already just buying stuff from the thrift store and you're only buying as little as you can because of the cost, clothes buying ban, not for you. Doesn't have to be. Don't feel like because you're just scrimping by that, like you should be able to do this. So I would say that it is definitely a privileged position to be able to even say this versus someone who really is only spending money on clothes when they have to. So it's really a mindset shift, and for most of us who have too much stuff in general. This is also somehow also bled beyond clothing for me to just stuff being brought into my house. Just like the random stuff that you would see at Target or TJ Maxx or whatever and think that you want to bring home. So being more intentional about what clothing I brought into the house has also helped me be more intentional about the other things. And I've also pretty much stopped wearing makeup, which when I started the clothes buying ban, I wore makeup regular enough, probably weekly. And that was absolutely not an intentional piece of doing the clothes buying ban, but I found that by taking out thinking about clothing as like part of like my brain space, because at this point I don't think about it hardly at all anymore. And not thinking about clothing somehow also connected to not thinking about makeup. And so I've gotten really comfortable with wearing the same stuff week to week. And I've gotten really comfortable with not worrying about makeup. And so I never would have expected that as a side effect, but it definitely has been one. So I don't know that I have anything else to add at the moment, but thanks everyone for hopping on and testing out our live stream capabilities here on Woven. And we're so glad to have you. And I think Regina and I are going to try and hop off and do random live streams. And it sounds like we will be able to hopefully have at least 2 speakers on video at the same time sometime in February. So in the future, you'll be able to see me and Regina on at the same time. And we'd love to do some member interviews when we can do that and hear some more about people's individual stories. So thanks everyone for testing this out with us. And we'll chat with you in Woven. If you've got any more questions about a clothes buying man, or if maybe I've inspired you, let me know. Thanks. Have a good day, everyone.